My name is Yashoda Kedar Patre, and I'm Research Coordinator at International Longevity Center, India. Today, I welcome you all on behalf of International Longevity Center, India, in this webinar series. This is the seventh lecture of this webinar series, and this is supported by Gharda Chemicals Limited under CSR support. So today, we are very lucky to have with us Dr. Nasreen Rustomfram from TISS, that is Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and she is going to speak on the topic of aging with ease. I will introduce her and then we will begin the session. Okay. So Dr. Nasreen Rustomfram is a professor at Center for Lifelong Learning, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai campus. She holds doctoral degree from TISS. All these years, Professor Rustomfram has been associated with adult learning, curriculum building, designing training, and capacity building programs for the social, corporate, and public sector domains. Her substantive areas include community health, educational technology, gerontology, social aspects of geriatric care, leadership programs for women, mental health, organizational behavior, and people skills. She has guided 9 doctoral students yet so far, and she has experience of teaching and training across the educational spectrum from MPhil to school dropouts in 4 languages, English, Hindi, Marathi, and Gujarati. Having been the administrative head for the Center for Lifelong Learning for 2 decades, she had chaired or been member of several inquiry committees on issues of discipline, sexual harassment with students, faculty, and administrative staff. As a project leader, she has worked on task groups and research projects with ministries, government bodies, and UN bodies, different kind of government departments, nationally and internationally. She has published many papers, and we are very, very lucky to have her with us today. So the floor is your, ma'am. Now I will share the presentation. Yes, thank you.
Namaskar to all the people gathered here to listen to this interesting session today. I'm grateful to the International Longevity Center India for having invited me to participate in this webinar series. I'm also very happy to note that they have been, this is the 8th, session in the series that they have initiated. And so all of you as an audience must be following their series, and you will also be well associated with several concepts to do with gerontology and geriatric care. So I thought that we would today look at this subject from the point of view of what is it that elderly can do, because I think there is a lot of analysis today that we do as to what is wrong, but what are the what are the steps that we can actually take to transcend and to move into this stage of life with all its challenges, with a sense of relative ease. And that is how the topic is aging with ease. So the very first slide that we look at tells us about, we can move to the next slide.
Yes, ma'am.
The very first slide just kind of refers to something that you must have already heard from earlier speakers. And I won't spend too much time on it, but just to put forward to you that the aging scene in India is a very complex one. And the most important point to note is that there is a lot of heterogeneity. We just assume that since we are talking of the elderly, 60 साल के ऊपर जितने भी लोग हैं ये सब बुजुर्ग हैं. बुजुर्ग हैं तो उनकी सब जो जरूरतें हैं या जो भी उनके हालात हैं वो एक जैसे हैं, बट ये बिल्कुल सच नहीं है. It is not at all true. The scene is not at all homogeneous. It is heterogeneous in the sense that there are urban and rural elderly. There are poor and well-to-do elderly. And there are elderly who are quite mobile and I would say independent in their functioning. And then there are elderly who are suffering from illnesses such as dementia, Alzheimer, etc., and are almost totally dependent on caregivers. So it is an extremely heterogeneous scene when we talk about, what is really aging scene in India. And it is so all over the world, in fact. We tend to think that there are homogeneous groups of people who will respond to the same solutions everywhere. But today we are going to look at the challenges as to what is the heterogeneity presenting us with. So the first thing is that there is a changing family system. We are moving from the joint to the nuclear family. I don't expand on that. I know that you would have a lot of information on your fingertips with regard to this. The gender issue, I would just like to point out in case it wasn't, but I think Professor Shivaraju had covered it in his first series, first talk, where he said that there are more women elderly rather than male elderly, and we are going to look at this in some greater detail later on. The high rate of dependence, by this, what we are implying is that the number of elderly and the number of working people, the ratio of the two, is something that is also important because it's the working age group that is from about 15 to 55 which sustains the economy. Those below 15 are still in the school going age, and those above 55 and 60 are heading towards retirement and moving out of the workforce to some extent. Now, this is also a challenge. We will look at the fact that for some people in our society, there is nothing like a retirement age. You know, farmers, workers in the unorganized sector, migrant workers, elderly women, all of these people are working till, जैसा हम हिंदी में कहते हैं, जब तक हाथ पैर चलते हैं तब तक हम काम में हैं. रिटायरमेंट जैसी कोई चीज नहीं है. तो चौथा जो विषय है वो पॉवर्टी एंड इकोनॉमिक इश्यूज. दिस इज a very critical aspect for us on the Indian scene to look at, and I earlier referred to the heterogeneity in this. There are fairly well-to-do elderly, but the vast majority of elderly in our country are in rural areas, and connected to the point that is coming up, illiteracy is very high. So, why are we talking of illiteracy when we say that India has actually achieved quite a high literacy level? Is because we are talking of the group that is above the age of 60. So, above the age of 60, meaning those who were born in 1955 or are today around 65, 66 years old. And so obviously they went to school during the 1960s. They must have finished school during the 1970s. So those who didn't get education or literacy at that point are today illiterate elderly. So you see how the situation has compounded in the sense that उस वक्त जिनको पढ़ाई नहीं मिली, उस वक्त जिनको शिक्षण नहीं मिला, तो वो आज के बुजुर्ग अवस्था में निरक्षर हैं ज्यादातर. और आज की दुनिया में जब हम देख रहे हैं कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा डिजिटल पुश हो रहा है और ज्यादा से ज्यादा इंटरनेट पे बैंकिंग वगैरह करने के लिए कहा जा रहा है और रोजमर्रा जिंदगी के लिए भी आसानी से लोग कहते हैं कि आप ऑनलाइन सब कर दीजिए, ऑनलाइन कीजिए, तो आप सोचेंगे कि जो निरक्षर है उसके लिए ये कितना मुश्किल है और ये ये दुनिया उसके लिए कितनी अजीब और अलग होगी, इसके बारे में भी आप सोच सकते हैं. छठा, हमारे एजिंग सीन भारत में माइग्रेशन ऑफ द यंग. तो माइग्रेशन दो तरह का है, एक देश के बाहर जो लोग जा रहे हैं युवा पीढ़ी, और एक जो ग्रामीण इलाके को छोड़कर जो शहर में आ रहे हैं. तो देर आर लॉट ऑफ एल्डरली पीपल लिविंग ऑल अलोन इन विलेजेस. नेक्स्ट. Yeshudha, next. Yeah. So, in our context, there is an absence of effective legislation. In fact, there is very little legislation. There are hardly two actually strong acts, which relatively strong, I would say, though there are people who would even challenge that and say कि इतने तो कोई मजबूत नहीं है, इनके नीचे इनके तहत भी after they have been promulgated also बहुत कम काम हुआ है. So there is an absence of effective legislation. Then the whole scene is compounded by the fact that there are health problems. So suffice it to say, I can say that there is a study which tells you that 62% of the elderly above the age of 80 suffer from two or more morbidities. It means there is a very large number of our old population which really needs a lot of care. Above the age of 60, at least 60% of the population has at least one chronic disease. That means something like hypertension or diabetes or arthritis or something of a chronic nature. Cardiovascular diseases, in fact, are among the highest. A day before yesterday, on the 7th of January, the largest longitudinal study of elderly in the world has been carried, the first phase results have been announced. It has been done by the Indian Institute of Public Health, and it has given significant data with regard to health and morbidity conditions of, the young old, 60 to 70 as we call them, and then the old 80 plus. Disability, a lot of health problems are leading to disability, and there is a large proportion of the elderly who suffer because after a stroke or after osteoarthritis or long duration of anything to do with rheumatism, etc. Elderly people, see, bone mineral density anyway tends to go down after the age of 55 or so. In women, it tends to go down soon after menopause, so it might begin even earlier than 55. And since bone mineral density goes down, it affects the bone strength and bone health, and falls become one of the major reasons for disability among the elderly. Uh, poor awareness in the sense that our society really thinks, most of our society really, maybe the audience who is gathered here today, in fact, are more sort of knowledgeable on this fact and more aware of it. But a lot of people tend to think that pain is normal. बुढ़ापे में सफर तो करना ही है और दुख तो होने ही वाला है. To take it for granted that there are going to be aches and pains. So why not encourage elderly to be at home? So we have very little idea about how to make public transport friendly, how to have ramps in public buildings. All of this is considered as a bit of a luxury, and most senior citizens are expected कि आप कम बाहर जाया कीजिए या घर में रहिए या trains are too crowded, it is dangerous for you to go. But the same number of people are not actually asking society or the government or infrastructure facilities should be improved for the elderly. It is equally as much their right to go out and to feel comfortable outside. So small efforts have been made. For example, in the city of Mumbai, Nana Nani parks have been set up. So, elderly feel more comfortable in an environment where footballs and balls are not flying past their heads and ears, and they are wondering how safe and how कहाँ बैठे कहाँ नहीं बैठे बच्चे भाग रहे हैं, you are walking slowly, you don't want to trip over somebody, hit something. So Nana Nani Park does help, in that sense. But we have miles to go, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं जो अब तक हमने इसके बारे में सोचा नहीं है, और अगर सोचा गया है तो हम कहते हैं कि हमारे पास we are not so rich as to do various things. But it does seem that sometimes we are very rich as to be able to build statues and and make bullet trains and all kinds of things. But when it comes to spending for the elderly, we don't seem to have, you know, uh, a budget. So, crimes against elders. Uh, Again, I don't go into details. It's a topic, a 2-hour topic by itself. The kinds of crimes that there are, the increase that is happening, and amongst the most recent, जैसे कि और कम नहीं था, तो अब बुजुर्गों को इस बारे में सोचना है कि ये जो कोविड के लिए रॉन्ग ये वैक्सीनेशन, कोविड के वैक्सीनेशन के लिए कॉल्स आ रहे हैं लोगों को, और बुजुर्ग लोगों से उनका आधार कार्ड नंबर ये वो पूछा जा रहा है, और वहां भी ठगाई चालू है. तो जैसे कुछ कम न था, तो और भी एक उसमें एक वजह और आ गई है to have economic crimes against elders. चेंजिंग वैल्यू सिस्टम. तो हम कहते हैं कि हाँ, हमारे पहले जमाने में एक थोड़ा कुछ साल पहले भी, समझिए कि 30-40 साल पहले भी इस तरह के मूल्य थे कि हम बुजुर्गों की बात सुने, उनके अनुभव से चलें. वो जो हमारे सामने रखते हैं वो उनके अनुभव का एक निचोड़ होता है, और we should learn from their experience. And today, with the internet, with the blogs, with Facebook, and all of this, I think young people manage to get information on their own much faster. The information is more current, and so there is not that much sort of value for uh, the experience of elders, which has actually been arrived at a different. So when we look at the generation gap, we are going to look at a particular slide. We will talk a little more on this. That does that mean that then elders have no value at all, or that their experience is not to be shared? and we will talk about that some more. Next, Yashadhara. I very quickly just want to point out to you, because we are talking of aging with ease. I just want to bring it to your attention. I think other speakers may have covered it, that studies have shown that 50 to 70% of all medical visits are actually related to psychological factors. Uh, it has been found that when uh, a medical doctor works along with the psychologist, the improvement is at twice the speed. And the main reason for this is, and if there are some doctors in the audience, please do not misunderstand what I am about to say. But most medical doctors are really concerned with the illness and not so much with the whole person. So it has been found that they would concentrate on, the medical management of the problem, whatever is presented. So, for example, it may be a gastrointestinal problem, and the doctor is concerned with prescribing medicines for that. However, gastrointestinal problems can often be the result of anxiety or stress. And very often, doctors don't have sufficient time to sort of, ask questions in between to find out whether the person is well or unwell. Very often, they don't want, too many questions to be asked, and they want you to follow instructions. It means that the psychological aspect of the problem, which probably is the root of the problem, has not been taken care of at all. And so this problem might persist. The same thing with migraine, the same thing with uh, people who have cardiovascular problems, for example, often think that their breathlessness is only due to their heart issue. But very often it can again be due to depression or anxiety or stress. So when the physical and the mental are both looked after together, the rate of improvement is 3 times faster in the older person. This is what has been seen. And also research tells us, clinical research tells us, that depression has a very negative effect, a powerful negative effect on your ability to counteract uh, physical illness. And depression also results in a lot of disability for that matter, because when you are depressed, you are not fully present. Your mind is wandering, it's not all there. And depressed people, to give you a very small example, very often just bang into a wall, or their feet fall against a wall, or as they are entering, they may trip over something. It's because they are not all there. So depression and disability are also, closely connected. Mobility. Next, Yashada. So this slide, I won't say I have just emphasized the point that integration and coordination of care between the medical as well as the neuropsychologist has a very powerful, strong effect. Next. Uh, I'm just giving you in bullet points what are the possible areas for intervention with older adults, you see. So there is adjustment to the stressors of late life, events which happen which are beyond your control. For example, the loss of spouse, the loss of your parents, the loss of close loved ones, and in the most unfortunate situations, sometimes the loss of your own child. But the longer you live, unfortunately, you have a lot of. But then stressors of late life are not only death. Even happy occasions can be stressors. Have you seen how many times people are in tears during a marriage or a wedding, or previous to the wedding, or to the birth of a child, or after a child is born and comes home? There can be some amount of sort of anxiety, because you are adjusting to a new baby. When there is marriage and a daughter-in-law enters the house, there is adjustment to a new adult, and all of these things can actually be stressors. So the second bullet point I talk about, so those are happy occasions. Having a baby is a very happy occasion. The marriage is a happy occasion, but they are still stressors because they call for adjustment. Uh, Anxiety disorders. Uh, I think all of you have heard of what these could be, and that there is a good deal of work to be done where capacity assessment. Maybe you haven't heard of this one, but you know, uh, after a stroke or after a decline in functional ability, there is a great need for us to understand what is this person now capable of doing? Because sometimes the family becomes overprotective and doesn't allow them to even bring a glass of water or put on a switch. And this isn't very helpful actually, because the person feels becomes totally dependent, and in some cases may not like it at all. And in other cases people might feel ये तो ज्यादा ही नाटक कर रहा है, actually ये तो कर सकता है पर ये करना नहीं चाहता. So the pendulum can swing from left to right. So capacity assessment is a very important area of intervention, and there are some very good scales. For example, the mini mental scale is there. The disability index scale is there, and then there is um, uh, I'm not getting. There are various scales actually, and a physiotherapist is amongst one of the people who can actually do a good capacity assessment of what is the possibility. Uh, what is the capacity that this person has? How much can he or she do and not? Another area is caregiving. Then there is dementia, depression, end of life care. Next, Yashoda. Health promotion is an important area. You know, there is an English phrase which says, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So you might convert it into grams and say that 10 grams of prevention is better than 1000 grams of cure. So it's better to prevent, and health promotion is one of those things which right now I would like to point out one area of health promotion which is extremely important, which is the adult immunization. And I think it is very worthwhile for all of us present here today to look at in terms of adult immunization for influenza, for pneumonia, and tetanus, which was given to you last when you are 7 years old, and now you are 65 or 66. So all of these, there are four important adult immunizations that need to be given at the age of 60 or 65. We have often discussed this with medical practitioners who say, Madam, इसके बारे में बात करने में कोई फायदा ही नहीं है. Nobody is going to do it. So the point is that one needs to create awareness about this, and some of these are to be done every year. So for example, the influenza virus, in fact, mutates more often than the coronavirus. It has now been coming in the news consistently that influenza vaccination should be given every year to older adults, to the elderly. So health promotion is an important area of intervention. Incontinence is very it's an emotionally taxing. It's actually a physical problem, but it's emotionally a very taxing problem for the person who suffers from it, as well as for people who are taking care. Insomnia. Once again, insomnia has an increasingly close association with mental health. And the roots of insomnia very often lie in anxiety or stress. Long-term care. So long-term care, for example, it could be just old age, it could be just, or it could be anything to do with recovering from diseases like cancer. Management of chronic diseases. This is again an area where a lot of work with elderly people can be done. Substance abuse, you might be surprised, but yes, elderly people do often suffer from substance abuse, particularly use of tobacco and alcohol amongst men. Um, and the last is suicide. Suicide is again by itself an area. Death, dying, grief, and handling the issues of leaving and leaving by your own hand. These are these require a lot of caregiving and an understanding with people. Yeah, next one. So having looked at these, we are now going to talk about, in this sort of wider context, what we are now going to talk about is how do we look at aging people? So aging with ease, nobody lives alone. No man is an island. You live as a part of society. So the way in which society looks at you and culturally the way in which older people are looked at in your society makes a very big difference to their physical and mental health. And can you age with ease if people are looking at you with stigma? And can you age with ease if people are looking at your stage of life? If society is looking at this stage of life with a lot of positivity, and it is very important for us to understand. So, in the Indian cultural context, we have the brahmacharya, the grahastha ashram, vanaprastha, and sannyas. And we understand that vanaprastha and sannyas are the two sort of stages of life which would fall into what we consider typically, 60 years and above as aging. And by the way, have you thought of why 60? Why not 55? Why didn't somebody think of, or after menopause for women is elderly, or so where does 60 come from? So actually, it was a German statesman called Bismarck who started some welfare policies during the late 18th century, in what was then Germany, still about to be formed. And he took the age as 60. And so Europe took it as 60. And then the UN took it as 60. And then everybody has taken it as all over the world. We just have 60 plus as a year for the elderly. So, but in the case of the, our four ashrams context, if we look at it, we would say that it gives us pretty clear idea of what the society expects that the older person would be doing at this time. So vanaprastha is really, your gradual detachment from the worldly, from the household duties, etc. And what in today's managerial language you might call as delegation. So अब बच्चों को अपने you consider them as adults, उनको बड़े समझ के उनको थोड़ा गाइडेंस देना, उनके ऊपर जिम्मेदारी डालना और धीरे धीरे खुद को गृहस्थी से दूर कर. So you can't immediately step into sannyas. So this is a very, I think, a very practical and a very easy way of how would you facilitate yourself into an elderly lifestyle. How would you move out of all the stresses and strains and the responsibilities of being a householder, looking after children, earning a living, etc.? How do you move away from all that? And it's not really very easy because just to give you an example, some of our most senior industrial houses are still headed by people who are in their 70s and 80s. So obviously they haven't picked up anything from the Vanaprastha ashram understanding. No detachment seems to have happened even at the age of 60, even on 60, even at 65 or 70. Just something to think about. So culturally and socially, we have certain precepts, we have certain norms. हमारे सामने कुछ ऐसी चीजें रखी गई हैं और आज नहीं पर बरसों से सेंचुरीज से ये हमारे सामने है. However, इसको फॉलो करना आज की दुनिया में इतना आसान है. We live in a very materialistic, consumer-oriented world. People who have held power don't find it so easily to give up. So you might say that to cultivate detachment is something that will help you to age with ease. But on the other hand, can you really do it? Can you slow down your pace of life? Can you start limiting your involvement? Can you start delegating and handing over your duties in a gradual way? These are questions for us today to look at and also to see what is it that we can bring in our own lifestyle that can help us to slow down and that can help us to get into aging gracefully and with ease. So the Western perspective, and I won't dwell on it too much, but society in the West before the Industrial Revolution, Europe we are talking about mainly, Europe and the Americas, was actually very much like what we consider in the East as I now described, our understanding of the four ashramas and, how we think of moving into the said years. What Industrial Revolution changed their whole society. Over a period of years, the West became much more cognizant. So for them, it was a process of change. For us in the East, वो बना बनाया ढांचा हमको दिया गया. So Eastern societies have not had time to acclimatize themselves into an industrial age, and even less time to acclimatize themselves into an internet age. So today you find senior people actually not so comfortable and wanting to understand how they can really become more comfortable in the circumstances that are there. So when we realize that we have not had a प्रोसेस यानी कि एक प्रक्रिया, जैसा कि आप एक चूल्हे पर पानी रखते हैं और आग लगाते हैं, उसको सुलगाते हैं, तो वो पानी अचानक से ऊपर नहीं आता, वो धीरे धीरे गर्म होता है. तो जैसे उसमें जो चीज है वो धीरे धीरे उसी तरह से वो पकती है. So the way in which you can actually initiate a process in the mind of somebody to acclimatize themselves to change, that is very important for your ability to age with ease. तो जब आपको कोई सिस्टम जो बाहर से बनी बनाई गई है और आपके ऊपर वो लादी जाती है, या अगर ऐसा कोई संदर्भ खड़ा हो जाता है जो एक क्राइसिस की तरह या एक क्रिटिकल इश्यू की तरह आपके सामने आ जाता है, तो ऑटोमेटिकली हम इंडिविजुअल्स जो हैं, सर्वाइवल हमारे लिए एक बहुत जरूरी चीज है और मेंटली सर्वाइव करना ये हमारे एवोल्यूशन में है. तो जब हम मेंटली सर्वाइव करना चाहते हैं तो हम उसकी तरफ रेजिस्टेंस दिखाते हैं क्योंकि उसमें हमको धोखा लगता है. We find that there is some risky thing. Suddenly typewriters have gone and this laptop has come, or these computers, or this keyboard has come. So typing was considered a profession which some people went and studied for 1 year, and now you have a keyboard in front of you. This is now meaning maybe say 20 years ago, and you were told, "Chalo type karo." So I remember an incident where one typist at Tata Institute had told me, because I said I'm going very slow, मुझसे ये हो नहीं रहा है, मुझे थोड़ी देर लगेगी ये करने में. So Dilip told me, he said, "Madam, अगर आप टाइपिंग करने लगेंगे तो फिर हमारी नौकरी का क्या होगा?" So it's from both sides. When something comes as a crisis, when it comes without an alternative, when it comes without what will some people do if others take over their particular expertise, all of these issues really don't help you to age with ease. What is it that society can do to help you to transcend, to move from one stage to another, whether it is socially, technologically, culturally, the change in the value system that we have, and all of the rest. Whatever we are facing in today's world, So there are many shopkeepers who actually don't believe I can do GPay. So that I call ageism. So they look at me and they say, "Madam, छोड़ दीजिए, अगर पैसे है तो दे दीजिए," is what they tell me. So, it's both ways. There are some elderly who are trying to catch up, and then there is rest of society saying, "It's all right, leave it." So next, Yashodhara. No, we've gone backwards. Yeah. So what are some of the visible signs of marginalization? जब हम कहते हैं कि ये सामाजिक संदर्भ में हम अपने आप को ढालने में कोई मुश्किलात हमको मिलती है या वी आर नॉट एबल टू डू इट, तो 2-3 चीजें हैं जो सामाजिक स्तर पर हमारे सामने आती है. So one is segregation in the family or social gathering. I remember an incident from Bangalore. This is about, say, 15 years ago. Again, I'm talking of some time ago, evolution, in which there were some elderly couples who mentioned to me that the lifestyle of their children changed dramatically when the software industry, when the IT industry, grew up in Bangalore. It became a totally different lifestyle for them. And one of the elderly couples told me, my son's traveling allowance is higher than my pension of 42 years. So the lifestyle that the son and daughter-in-law and that family was leading, but they were living in the same house, was so different for the elderly couple, and it was quite difficult for them to take that in. Something else that happened in that society, again, the example is from Bangalore, is that, for example, the elderly couple were not used to consumption of liquor in the home. But when the young couple started giving parties, everybody told them that yes, liquor would be sort of served, or if it wasn't served, then the party wouldn't be so exciting. So when the elderly couple expressed some reservations and said, we are not quite sure, how this will happen, then the younger couple said, okay, then, you don't come outside in the drawing room, you stay in the bedroom. So I'm asking you to understand at a human level what these issues are, not just at the level of an academic research, not just at the level of, think what is segregation in the family. This is the beginning of segregation in the family. If you ask me, how is the issue to be sorted out? Should the young couple say that, okay, we will not give this? Should the old couple say, all right, you may give this and we will stay in our bedroom? So it really depends on the family context, the relationship of trust. How have the children been socialized? How have parents brought them up? What is the context in which they are? What is the context of the parents? Are they able to understand the need for some amount of change, acceptance of change? And are the children able to understand what is the extent to which they can change in one go? Or again, can there be a process of change? Can there be smaller steps towards change and then maybe larger steps towards change? These are some things that we need to look at. And the next two bullet points on this slide are referring to the fact that we have stereotypes, whether it's for the young or for the elderly. So how many of us, for example, have heard that the young today are really carefree and, they are arrogant, they don't really listen, they won't take responsibility, and they are selfish. And how many of us from the other side have also heard that elderly people are rigid, conservative, they don't want to change, they are non-productive, काम का ना काज का, दुश्मन अनाज का, they say. So, it's a phrase. And phrases are a very important part of the symbolic life of your culture. The kind of phrases that you have, the kind of metaphors that you have, they say much more about your society and culture than anything else that you would show. Just by way of a sentence, you can actually point to what your thinking is or what the larger thinking is. So the third thing is ageism. Ageism means negative attitude towards and discriminatory attitude towards people who are older, above the age of 60. So along with words like racism, that means you have negative attitudes towards people of a certain race, or sexism, it means you have negative attitudes towards women or transgenders, etc. So ageism is a word that was coined fairly recently, 1968, by an American gerontologist called Robert Butler. And ageism is something that we find very much in the world of work. There are a lot of sort of employers who would prefer not to hire older people. Next. Yes, this is the important one when I mentioned that we will be talking about, the generation gap and what this actually means. Uh, I just gave some examples about the perception that the young have about the older and what older people have about younger people. Yes, uh, we know that this is a fact, we know this is true, but how can it be improved? So, as I said at the beginning of the session, what are the things that we can do? We know that this is there, we know that this is a problem, and we know that we want to handle it. So, on this slide, I have just given some idea about, some of the ways by which this can be handled. So, for example, creating awareness about aging amongst younger groups. Uh, we mentioned earlier that there is very little awareness about uh, how we age. What are the anxieties that accompany us? What are the stressors in later life that we are dealing with? And I think that younger groups need to hear a little more about this. Not from the point of view of a lecture or a bhashan or some kind of a preaching kind of a thing, but in terms of the fact that uh, what are the responsibilities that somebody, for example, has handled. Yes. Now you see that somebody today has been a football coach, and in the area of sports, uh, in a sense, you retire from your work a little earlier because as strength reduces, there is a necessity for you to be in the field till about say 45 or so, and later on many good players become coaches. And so even when you retire from coaching, uh, what has the lifestyle of this person been? It has been a very active lifestyle. The person would obviously like to continue to remain active. This is something that you need to understand, because when you age, it's not that you become 60 or 61 and you suddenly become a different person. No. All through life, whatever you have done, whatever you have been, there is a continuity in your self concept, the way in which you see yourself. So, you've been a mentor to younger players. And later on, when you became a coach, then you have been a coach and a mentor to people. You have shared your experiences. You would probably like to continue doing that. Yes. So, professors, doctors, there are many professions for that matter, which really have no end in life in that. What they have, in fact, is the ability to move into something else. And younger generation can be helped to understand that there is this continuity. They can also be helped to understand what has been, how to look at elderly people in the context of what their past has been. One thing that many young people grumble about is कि वो तो पहले का ही बोलते हैं कि when I used to buy an egg in only 20 paise, those were the days, and when I had my education in only 25 rupees and your fees is 2,500 rupees. So the point is to understand, to help younger people to understand that more has gone behind than is to come. It is but natural for you to be able to speak with more feeling, more emotion about what you have undergone and the way in which your life has been lived. So, falling back on memories is a way of history telling. It is not merely a way of reprimanding somebody to say, हम तो ऐसा करते थे, तुम तो ऐसा कर रहे. It is not a comparison. And if we can encourage conversation, if we can encourage dialogue, and here elderly people will also have to come forward. It's not a one-way street. While the young will understand, the olders will also have to understand that there is something to be said to listening to younger people. So, similarly, older people will also have to learn to understand that there is a lot of competition, that there is a lot of stress, that a lifestyle today is different from what they led. Say, for example, today I'm 65. What is the lifestyle I led when I was in my early 20s, sometime in the early 70s or mid 70s, in 1975 or 1977? What was the world? What was the context in which I lived? And what is the context today in 2021 that a young person is living in? So this is something that older people will also have to give some attention to. So understanding each other's points of view, or POV as it is often abbreviated to, greater mutual tolerance, and appreciating each other through empathy. The ability and empathy comes more easily to older people. The ability to have a wider horizon, to have a wider scope, because you've met more people in life, you've shouldered more responsibilities than the younger person. And the older person has the capacity, if he or she wishes to cultivate it, to show more empathy. So the use of print and visual media to emphasize mutual respect between both, I think it is very critical. And here I give you examples from the world of advertising. Till some years ago, also, most of the advertisements would show how the daughter in law who is young introduces a new masala into the house or a new cooker into the house, and the older lady is sort of resistant and says, no, no, this won't be good. And, then afterwards comes to accept. I think we have moved beyond that. Today, there are advertisements which show that the older lady in the house brings in something new, or accepts, or, says how to run. For example, she has adapted to a washing machine or to some mixer grinder, or whatever, something new, and she brings it into the house, and uh, is shown as a person who also has the ability to accept change, has the capacity to accept change. I think it makes a lot of difference, the kind of messages that you give out in the media. If you consistently give out messages where old people are resistant to change, or they are grumbling, or they are unhappy, so you have a lot of advertisements today, and I'm very happy to see those advertisements also, where, for example, the older couple is going out, or they are enjoying, or they are, giving a party or doing something which is fun. Because generally, again, another stereotype for the elderly couple is that they should always be maybe into religion, maybe only into bhajans and satsangs. And yes, many people could be, but not necessarily all. So do not have stereotypes about older people in the print and the visual media. Just as you portray all kinds of young people, you must portray all kinds of older people too. Next, it went back. Yes. So, very briefly, I want to point out the fourth point on this slide, which is effectiveness of your social network. This is very critical for aging with ease. It is again something that at the age of 60 or 65, you can't suddenly make all new friends. Your friends continue with you. In fact, if there is one advantage of this, WhatsApp and all the social media applications that have come, there are a lot of people on Facebook, etc., who have been able to find their school friends and link up. They've been able to find, people with whom they lived, like whatever, 15 years ago, I was in Jaunpur, and, my neighbors in Jaunpur, etc. Or I was in Chennai and I lived in the hostel with these many students, and, I find somebody from there. And today that person is, manager in a bank somewhere. And it's so interesting. And families have been able to interact. So there is something to be said, while we always have not a very high opinion of social media and all the crime and everything that takes place, and of course all the some of the most disgusting forwards that reach you from you don't know where from somebody. Despite all that, there has been, social media has been able to bring people together. In fact, today we are addressing from this platform, I don't know how many people, which otherwise we would never have been able to do if this was to be a face-to-face session. We would probably have been 25 people, and that's about it. So, your social network, now I'm not talking of social media, I'm saying your social network, which has to be cultivated from a relatively younger age. And this network, you have to look at in terms of not only quantity but also quality. So I ask you a simple question. I'll ask you 5 questions. And what you have to do is to put down the name of the person to whom you would go to for that. So my first question is, if you wanted money, who would you go to? Just put down a name. Don't say a friend, don't say a good friend, put down the name of the good friend. Who would you go to if you needed money? The second question is, who would you go to if you were ill, if you needed looking after? The third question is, who would you go to if you wanted entertainment? If you wanted to go see a movie, if you wanted to go to a party, you want to go shopping, who would you go to? And the last question is, who would you go to if you wanted some help with a family member? Say you want help with your children, or you want help with your mother, or you want some help with anybody, an aunt, some member of your family. Now you have 4 names, I suppose. Now look at those 4 names. Is it the same person more than once? Is it the same person in 3 out of 4? So here is a problem. What is the problem? What is the effectiveness of your social network? Are there so few people that you can really turn to? It will create a lot of anxiety within you. Because if you need money and you go to X, and if you need some help with the illness, you want to go to X, and if you have some other issue, you go to X. It means if X is not available, you are tense. So your ability to have a wider network, your ability to have people around you, whether they are relatives or friends or peers, whether they are at the office or otherwise, is a sign of good health. Is a sign of good social and mental health. And that is something that is important for aging with ease. So if I'm speaking to, I hope that I'm speaking to a diverse group of people where some of you might even be younger, than 60. Think about this and start preparing. Have a wider network. Okay, next. Yes. Uh, Here I just wanted to point out that actually being alone and feeling alone, the two are different. Yes? Okay, next. What we will go to now, I think, is the last 3 slides. The one which says yes, this one. So adjustment as an event, a status, or a process. So adjustment to aging and retirement, I want you just to remember that since only about 1% of our population works in the organized sector, retirement is only applicable to that 1%. And we talk about retirement so much and we devote so many chapters to it, and maybe we've taken this from elsewhere. Uh, Let us think about the next slide, where really 99% of our people who are in the rural areas and who are in the unorganized sector would not really be retired. Yes. So at a 2/3 of the elderly are in the unorganized sector. So apart from this fact, yes, Anjali, I see you. So I think little bit we are overshot the time.
Yes, ma'am.
How many
Yeah.
more slides remaining?
I think that I would like to come to the last two.
Okay, ma'am.
Good enough.
I would
Go
like
on.
to come to a slide which says elderly adult.
Sure, sure. No problem. We're enjoying what you're saying. Please
Yes, ma'am.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can't run over the time. Yeah, thank you, Yashodhara. You are so
Yes, ma'am.
competent. Thanks. Thanks a lot. So, we have different patterns of aging. This is something to understand because this will help us to understand that what is it that stands in the way of aging gracefully. Yes. So, there are some people who take aging in a mature sense, in the sense that there is an understanding that one is headed towards a stage of life where one is going to slow down and take things. Then there is what is known as the rocking chairman. So person accepts their role and becomes a little dependent on others, in the family to look after them, etc., for emotional and financial support. A third type of a pattern of aging is the disengaged. That is, people who don't really want to admit that they are getting old and they don't want to depend on anybody, and they feel that they should just behave as they behaved when they were 40 years old and continue to travel as much and continue to run around and continue to take assignments. And, they would like to really sort of, so they are disengaged with the process of their age. And then the last of all is the self-haters who hate being old and dependent. Yes. And they sort of just say that, humko maut kyun nahi aa jati, it's a very sort of depressing state of life. There are so many things I can't do, etc. So, what are the reasons for this? And how do we deal with people? So the next slide. There is something called the self concept. The self concept is my image of myself. Who do I think I am? So if I say I am a hardworking, middle class professor who is also a very responsible Indian citizen and a very good neighbor to the people in my society. Now this is my self concept. This is who I think I am. Yes. And I am helpful by nature, but I don't like to talk to strangers. Now, this is my self concept. This is what I think I am, who I am. And this is the thinking that my behavior is going to come out of. So if my neighbor is in any problem, I will be there ringing the bell to help out. If there is any issue like with regard to say vaccination or elections or something, then because I think I'm a good Indian citizen, I will offer for vaccination. I will make sure that I vote in the election because my image, my self-concept tells me that I'm a good Indian citizen. Yeah. So how does self-concept evolve? It evolves from the day that you are born, the way in which you are reared and socialized, the care that you are given. Are you raised in an unsafe, insecure atmosphere or in a home full of love? Do your caretakers change every 2, 3 years and sometimes you are living with your aunt, sometimes with your grandparents? Or did you have a secure childhood with, one family? Uh, did you grow up in a heterogeneous kind of a place? Did you have people from all kinds of caste, color, religion, region staying around you? Or did you grow up in an extremely homogeneous little background where you didn't really meet diversity and you don't know much about that? Your self concept is shaped by all of these factors. As you grow old, you become more dependent on your inner thoughts because the cognitive ability to think grows as you grow from childhood to adulthood and adulthood to older age. What you acquire is the ability to muddle out thoughts in your own mind and people's opinions matter less. So, for example, you may have told an elderly person, "आपको तो इस शादी में जाना चाहिए, people are expecting you to come." But if you feel that you don't really want to socialize and go, you will be pretty firm and say, "I don't feel up to it and I don't really want to." So, this is called as a change from active mastery over one's life to a passive mastery. That is, inside, this is what you are, and this is how you think. But please note the third point. The ability to relate emotionally to others declines in old age. Why? Because your own thoughts, it's a process of detachment that you begin to develop, that most people develop, and they understand what is their comfort zone. So, what we consider as rigidity or conservative is basically your ability to want to make decisions for yourself. And that is what the next slide says. Next slide. So your self-concept is basically stable through your adult life. As I said, it develops in the very early years of life and it is crystallized during your adolescence and your youth years. Youth and identity, it stabilizes. And from there on, the profession that you take up, the kind of lifestyle that you choose to live, the activities that you actually do uh, as an adult, all of these remain fairly stable through life, through your adult life. And this is associated with positive adjustment. So when you move from adolescence to youth to young adulthood to middle adulthood, and middle adulthood to the older adulthood, through all these stages, you recognize that there are certain roles that you are being called upon to perform. And you perform those roles with an understanding that comes from your self concept. I'm a responsible father. And then later on, you'll say, I'm a responsible grandfather. So when you move through the stages of life, a very important dimension for your self-concept is to understand how far are you in control of life. The moment you feel or you are made to feel that somebody else controls you, your self-esteem suffers. A positive sense of self-esteem is associated with the ability to make decisions for yourself. So, for example, in an illness like Parkinson, where it is only the physical body that suffers, but mentally and intellectually the person is fine. Parkinson does not, like dementia, affect your thinking, your cognitive process. Yes, later on there may be some cognitive decline, but in the early and middle stages of Parkinson, it is only the body that suffers, and the brain is perfectly fine. The cognitive abilities are perfectly fine. In those situations, they find it very difficult when, because of their physical disability, they are asked to do or not to do certain things, and self-esteem is greatly affected during this situation. So, last one. So, in the last slide, what we are talking about is the positive sense of self-esteem is associated with aging with ease. So, if your self-concept has been positive through life, it is possible that there may be some incidents or some crises that you may lose a loved one, you may go through some very difficult illness, you may develop some chronic problem which requires treatment, hospitalization, your physical stamina may go down. All of these crises, your self-concept may
lecturer is very educative and
may become
is giving all practical
unstable for a time in a situation of crisis. What we need to understand with regard to that individual is that this is not a permanent instability. That once restored to reasonable physical and mental health, the person will recover and be himself or herself. So, in aging with ease, the role to be played by relatives, the role to be played by society, and the role to be played by caregivers and health institutions is equally critical in maintaining good mental health and positive mental health, and a perception of the senior citizen as a productive and equal being, not as a person who is now weak or non-productive. So with that, I think I come to the end, and if there are any issues or questions, any comments, I would be happy. I know some comments were coming in through the chat, but I haven't been looking at them. So Yashodhara, if you would like to point out,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Fuller sir. Yes. First question.
Mrs. Nasreen Sahibji came show. Basically, we have started this elder care and the organization for intergeneration in Pune. And basically, we are trying the same thing what you have narrated here, so that we are ready with the material to teach elders to take care of elderly people. And I think if you would like to share your slides, we can add few more points for the senior citizens to take care of senior citizens to start with, instead of depending on the other members and youngsters. Thank you. Would you like to say something?
when you said, could you share your slides, you mean you want to use these slides to do sessions in your institution?
Basically, I would like to add them to educate more the senior citizens and the younger generation, because we have a center for intergeneration.
Yeah, you are welcome to adapt these slides to whatever good cause that you want to use them for. You are welcome.
Thank you very much, Saibji.
Okay. Anyone else, please? Okay.
Thank you, Nasreen. I'm Anjali
Yes,
here
sir.
from
Narula,
Pune.
sir. Narula, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Unmute yourself, sir, please.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Daulat Narula. Is it Mr.?
Yes, yes, Mr. Anand. Sir, please
Okay.
unmute yourself. I've sent you the request. Okay. I think there is some problem. Yes, sir.
We can see him.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you for your nice presentation. Obviously, there is a big issue of the elderly and elder abuse, which is becoming very common in India. Not only in India, I think it is all over. Uh, ASCON is an organization which is an All India Senior Citizens Confederation, the
Yes.
largest organization
Yes.
in India, having about 25 lakhs members
Yes.
and lot of associates. I have suggested for a topic on elder abuse that we should have sort of a collaboration with TISS, who has a lot of knowledge gathered, and they are working very nicely all over the country. So our organization would like to have a collaboration for which I can write to you, ma'am, and maybe we can work together to create an awareness
Yes,
amongst the
certainly.
young and
Certainly,
old,
Mr. Narula.
amongst the
Certainly.
young and old, how to improve the situation in India for this kind of elder abuse and things like that.
Yes, certainly. I am very well aware of ASCON, and I've had the honor of working with Mr. Chaple and Dr. Javdekar and many others, members of ASCON in New Bombay.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have also done more than one or two sub-collaborative activities. So we would
Yes.
be very happy to work with you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Before,
Thank you.
thank you, Narula, sir. Before we move to next question, I request Umranikar sir to say a few lines. He has to go somewhere. Yes.
No, this is just to thank Dr. Nasreen for a wonderful lecture. In a very easy language, you have explained how to pray gracefully. And this is one topic which is very near to my heart. I also keep on talking about these things. I liked some of the points you have mentioned, especially the correlation between the physical and the mental health. Psychosomasis is something which is very, I would say, debilitating if the doctors don't pay attention to this dimension of the problem. And the next thing is regarding the four ashramas. No one would have thought that our culture has had developed even in those days to this extent where we could show a person how to ease yourself out of active life. And this is a very important concept which probably the Europeans do not understand. In fact, you might be aware in the UK, the process is going in the reverse direction, saying that the seniors should be given jobs. Even those who are very old, if they are active, they should be given jobs. So they are not thinking of any kind of vanaprastha or sannyasa, but they want to enter grihastha again. So this is the difference between the, I think, Western and Eastern culture that we have. I just want to mention one thing.
Eastern philosophies are always very collective. So even
Very
if you
true.
look at the cultures of countries like Japan, China, etc., you
Yes.
find that these kind of concepts are much easier acceptable in the Eastern Hemisphere than in the West.
Yeah. In fact, I think there is the acceptance itself is that word. There is more acceptance in Eastern culture than in the Western culture. And the last thing I want to mention is regarding ageism. You brought in the name of Bob Butler. He was the founder president of ILC Global Alliance. He's the one who started international longevity centers all over. And that was much before I joined ILC. But when I heard so much about him, it was very, very refreshing to know that everybody knows him for that. Everybody knows him for his contribution and for the evolution of the concept of ageism. A wonderful lecture. I'm sorry I have to leave, so I will excuse myself and I will
Thank you.
please continue the discussion, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes. Okay. Any more questions? We are near to close the session. Ma'am, from the chat, there is one question. I will just read out from Rekha Bhatkhande,
Hello.
ma'am.
Hello.
Okay, who is this?
Dr. Bhatkhande. Good evening, Dr. Bhatkhande.
No, there is someone else.
Hello. Hi,
Yes.
Nasreen. So lovely to hear you.
Hi,
Yes, ma'am.
Rekha. Thank you so much for giving time.
No, I mean, it's my pleasure. I'd love to hear you. So, no problem.
Ma'am,
Nasreen, I have come across, and I've been asking this question at quite a few forums. I've realized because of all this very active aging and a lot of, focus being put onto the elders now, is that there is I'm beginning to see a lot of competition amongst the elders. That is why my question, that have you come across people who want to be first among equals, because we're all the same, all elderly are the same, but, there seems to be some sort of a, competition in even aging wisely, gracefully, well, I just wondered if you all had actually come across such a situation where there is a very competitive spirit amongst elders.
So, are you referring to individual elders or you're referring to competitive spirit among the organizations working with elders?
Well, actually, individuals make an organization. So, ultimately it's all going to spill over to, whoever you get together with.
Doctor, what I'm about to say, I'm just thinking out of the top of my head because, yes, both of us work in very similar environments, and we do know organizations and we do know individuals. And I I wouldn't say that uh, you see, because organization and individuals ultimately exist as a part of society. And all over, if society itself is going to be very competitive, then I think that it's unfortunate, but without thinking, organizations and individuals may join in that backdoor. And I agree with you. Somewhere I sense that you are not happy with that situation. And I would agree that, it's not a situation where one can be, because uh, uh, you see, recognition for a task done has become partly the issue for NGOs because of CSR funding and various other circumstantial issues that have arisen. So, if you can show yourself to be on top, and if you have more hits in the social media, and if you have a very strong website, so many of the funding organizations also have pushed NGOs to this. And in fact, I can see both kinds of individuals. NGOs which were headed by individuals who could not really join in this race. Sometimes, even though the organizations have been very good, they have floundered. And in other cases where the work is not up to that much of the mark, but if the leader of the organization is very good with say visibility, then they have been able to sort of come up. Uh, Another aspect, I think, where this competitive spirit has been seen is in gearing up with, say, political parties. So earlier, a lot of us used to say invite political figures because that helped us to sort of get permissions or get certain things done. So I think that, to answer your question directly, I think it's not just individuals who are competitive by nature. It is, some may be, but most are pushed into this competitive race because of the factors and the circumstances surrounding them. This is what I have seen.
Very
Okay.
good. Thank you, Nas.
Thank you, Dr. Nasreen. Anjali ma'am, you want to say something?
Yeah, you're asking me, right, Yashoda, or
Yes.
is it Anjali Deshpande?
No, no, Anjali Raje ma'am. Yeah.
Okay.
We are
Now,
closing the
are
session
there?
now. Yes.
Okay. So first of all, a very big thank you, Nasreen, for delivering one of the best lectures that I've heard on such a unique topic. I think many have liked the topic itself, aging with ease. And in fact, one of the most important interventions that you sort of said would be a practical approach to trying to get everyone to age with ease is the intergenerational support system, or the bonding or solidarity, or whatever that particular phrases. I think that is one of the most important interventions that would help everyone age with ease, to have a sense of mutual respect for each other, the younger and the older generation, a sense of mutual tolerance, empathy. I think there is a lot of adjustment that would be required from both ends. And if that works out, especially in our Indian society, where we still have a joint family system, however much we have moved towards a nuclear lifestyle, nuclear family lifestyle, I think this would really work. And creating awareness by working on children at a very young age itself, creating that, recreating, I would say, the Indian culture of respect for elders, respect for women, all those values that the Indian culture was known by. I think that would be one of the most important interventions in helping everyone age with ease. And I think you really made a very nice point, especially on that patterns of aging. The four kinds of elderly, the chairman and the mature person. I think that was a very new take, and I don't know where I would fit in, but really good one. So thank you
I
so
think
much, and
sometimes we move from one to the other,
one to the other,
circumstances
exactly,
are also not the same.
exactly.
And we are entitled to that. It's not a worry.
Great.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
that was something really unique and really loved it. In fact, I have been privileged, I would say, to have met Dr. Robert Butler on many occasions, because yeah, as Mr. Umranikar said, he was the founder president of the Global Alliance of ILCs, We had hosted a couple of meetings. I had met him many times in person, and he was a really good person. And uh, to, to have him as the founder president of ILCGA is really our privilege and honor. And ageism, I think, is one of the most important, what should I say, or rather the most negative of things that could be happening in this world. And we hope to get rid of it through, as you said, intergenerational bonding, creating awareness, because no one escapes old age. So I think that should be the tagline for everyone to understand. You're going to be on that side pretty soon.
Yes.
So thank you once again very much, and thank you to all our
Thank
viewers. We've had some on Facebook and YouTube also, and to
Yes.
all of you who are present here. A big thank you to our supporters, our sponsors, the Gharda Chemicals Limited, and thank you to my team for arranging this. We look forward to Dr. Vinod Kumar, who's here. His
Yes.
presentation next Saturday will be joining in next Saturday as well. Thank
Yes,
you,
ma'am.
Nasreen.
Okay.
Thank you very much to
Thank
you,
you, everyone.
Anjali, and to the International Longevity Center. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
ma'am.
Dr.
Namaskar.
Gangadharan, you've joined, but we are just closing down. Dr.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes.
Gangadharan has joined as we have just said our
yes. He did a
goodbyes.
session one of the Saturdays.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So,
So thank you,
thank you
ma'am.
so much.
Thank you, Dr.
very
Nasreen, for
much.
your vicious presentation. And thank you. See you. Okay.
Thank you, Yashoda, for your support.
Yes.